What is going on, everybody? I'm back after a little short break. Thank you for Cliffy for doing that solo show. He crushed it. Welcome back to the NHL Strategy Show, Stokastic NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by BetMGM. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy. How we doing on this Saturday morning?
Not too bad. Beautiful sunshine out this morning. Went for a nice little walk to get my day going. Been really unseasonably warm here. I don't know how it works out, but I think it's been about 72, 75 Fahrenheit every day this week, which is where I live in Canada. You don't get that in November. So just enjoying the very nice weather while we still have it, because I'm sure it won't last too much longer.
Yeah. Pretty soon it'll be snowing. It was 72 here yesterday, and I went outside. I was in like a hoodie and like jackets, and I was like, wow, it's way too hot for this.
Yeah.
The weather, it's November. I'm like expecting a little bit of a chill, but here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a 10 gamer today. And the first thing when I was going through the slate, there are power play spots abound on this slate. Just tons of great power play spots. We will try to get through it. I feel like since I'm a 1-3 lineup guy, I'm just like, damn, man, I wish I was making 150. There are so many good power play spots. I just like lock in some power play stacks, hit the crunch, and rock and roll. What are you seeing so far on this slate?
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's a few matchups where, like both teams are in the top 10 for power play opportunities this season, or, one team's taking a lot of penalties, one team's drawing a lot of penalties. Like there are some pretty clutch power play spots, I agree, on this slate. And there's also a fair bit of lineup movement. I mean, there's only one team on the back-to-back, I think, today, at least for the main slate tonight, and that's Buffalo. But, there could be some lineup changes in Pittsburgh with Jake Gensel and his illness. We'll get to that. There were lineup changes for Ottawa at practice yesterday. Montreal keeps fiddling with their depth lines, seemingly every game. Calgary changed up their lines last game as they're getting their brains beaten by Nashville. I think Calgary, I didn't watch the game, but Calgary in that loss against Nashville had like 3 shots in the first 22 or 23 minutes of the game. Not very good, obviously. Florida changed up their lines at the end of the last game. Anaheim changed up their lines as they gave up 8 goals to Vancouver. So lots of line changes. And as always, Stokastic members, please check the Discord either throughout the day or certainly at warm-ups when the games start locking to see what the new lines are going to be, because obviously we're doing this blind. It's Saturday morning, no morning skates or anything like that yet. So we don't know if the lines are going to stick, but we're going to try our best to get through it at any rate.
Oh, yeah. And we're just on pure copium right now. No caffeine since last Saturday for me. I got through it. I feel much better now. Don't worry, Harry Carey's still around. He might pop up from time to time. We got a $2 super chat. It says, enough weather talk. What are those smash plays? Thank you very much for the super chat. We'll get to it right now. How about that? But before we do, make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Don't forget, almost all of our content is available in podcast form, except for Live Before Locks, because, it's right before lock. And you can get it on the platform of your choice. Help us out by leaving a 5-star review. I see there are about 25 of you. Congratulations on waking up early on a Saturday morning. You get a nice treat. Please hit that like, subscribe. Most of you guys who are already here, I'm sure you do already, because it is 9 a.m. Eastern time, and you probably have to set an alarm to get to this show. But let's get into this slate. Let's start with the first game of the night. We have the Boston Bruins with a 3.2 total heading into Toronto. The Maple Leafs have a 3.5 total. John Tavares saved the Maple Leafs season, according to the Maple Leafs fans. He had a hat trick. He looked great. Of course, the Leafs break out on a 2-game slate when they're 9,000% owned. It's just, what it is. But There's some big totals in this game. I don't know why Toronto has a higher total than Boston here. I guess it's just because Toronto's at home. This is a tough matchup for the Maple Leafs. I don't know why I keep saying Maple Leafs. The Leafs. Matthews is going to see a fair bit of that Bergeron line. And, we talk about, how Colorado won is kind of matchup proof and all these like Dallas won kind of matchup proof. I'm not sure how Matthews and Marner are playing this season that you would call them matchup proof. Now they do have a big total. We don't have ownership yet, but going into Boston is a tough matchup. We might get some lower owned Leafs. If that's the case, maybe I'll take some stabs on Matthews. But for me, I like the Boston side here.
Yeah, the first thing I want to mention on the Toronto side is that Timothy Liljegren is expected to return on the blue line for the Maple Leafs. Might not seem like a big thing, but he was one of their biggest drivers of offense from the blue line last year. I went back and looked at his expected goals and actual goals impacts with both Matthews and Tavares. And the top two lines for the Leafs generated way more expected goals and way more actual goals when they're skating with Liljegren than with anyone else. If you look at some of Liljegren's micro stats from last year, it seemed like almost every zone entry that he had, the Leafs were creating offense. So it's his first game back, and it's still, it was only a 60-game season last year, first full season. So you don't want to read too much into it, but he was a highly touted prospect, really expected to be a top end puck mover. And he kind of showed I'd say more than flashes of that last year. So I think he makes a big impact for this team, being able to move the puck through the neutral zone and get into the offensive zone to start creating chances. And it's not as if the Toronto top line hasn't been creating, right? Like they're over 4 expected goals per 60 minutes this year. It's just they're shooting under 5%. The 3 years prior, they shot over 12%. You have to figure they're going to start turning that around. Now, whether it's against Boston or not, I mean, who knows? But, Austin Matthews had 3 goals in 2 games against the Bruins last year. Like I don't want to say he's completely matchup proof, but these teams do tend to score goals when they're facing each other. It is a pretty intense rivalry going back to the it was 4-1 meme. So I do like the Toronto top line a bit here tonight. I wouldn't say like this is a smash spot or anything like that. Like you said, going up against Bergeron is certainly a tough matchup. And with Ullmark in net instead of Swayman, Ullmark started this year at least a little bit stronger. But Toronto's still generating a lot. They're still getting quite a bit of ice time. Marner's price is relatively depressed. Michael Bunting, on DK, just over 4,100. We've certainly seen him in the 5Ks, particularly last year. I do like Toronto 1 here tonight. Whether it's the game that they finally, completely explode, I don't know. But I don't think that this is a place to overlook just because they're facing Boston. They do have offensive success against them. It's just, whether the team wins or not, we don't really care. It's just whether they score goals. I think they can score some goals here tonight. Alex Kerfoot on the second line for Toronto. A few years ago in the bubble season, that line wasn't bad together with Tavares and Nylander. They haven't been that great since. Nylander's not getting a ton of ice time, 17, 18 minutes, something like that. That's fine. He's also another shooting percentage culprit, shooting about 5% at 5-on-5. You got to figure that's going to turn around eventually. Going into that Boston second line, not really a terrible matchup with Zacha there, at least not so far this season. They've been pretty good offensively, but, allowed just as much defensively. So I think there is some merit to even going back to John Tavares if you want, or, one-offing Nylander or something like that. But I think this is a Toronto 1 matchup. I do like Boston 1 as well. They're just, they're starting to get really, really expensive. Marchand, his price has come up $2,000 in 2 games. Jake DeBrusk is probably the highest price we've ever seen him. As well. So, when you're spending $21,000 to $22,000, at least over on DK, for a team on the road, like it's fine. I imagine when our top stacks come in, they're going to be a good leverage spot. I just think I would take the Toronto side in this one. The top line is just still generating too much. Eventually, that dam's going to break and the goals are really going to come. So maybe we can get some low top line leaves here tonight.
Yeah, it's an interesting game, especially because if this was a shorter slate, I probably would have to consider them 1 to 3. But in 10 games, like, you can, and I think there's going to be lower ownership on like Matthews is always going to be owned. It's just what it is. But you may not get 25% Matthews on the slate. I think it could be a sneaky spot for him. Moving to the blue lines here. You mentioned Liljegren is back. He is min price on DraftKings. I'm not sure whose spot he takes. It might be Victor Mete, I would assume.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like, the right side, the defensemen are really cheap, like Hull, Sandin, and Liljegren. All 3K or under. If you want to go Morgan Riley for power play, that's fine, but I don't think I'm going to be power play stacking the Leafs tonight. Hampus Lindholm up to 5,900. That's a bit pricey. I think, Grizzlick 5,400 is a bit pricey. Maybe I think, the guy on the Boston side would be Brandon Carlo for some shot blocks at 2,600.
Yeah, that was the guy I was thinking. More of a DK play than on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, Carlo 2,600, definitely a shot block threat for near stone min price. So he's probably my target. As is, I think Liljegren is fine as a min punt. He might only play 16 or 17 minutes in his first game back. That would be my one concern. But like I said, pretty good offensively. Maybe he can, a couple shots, donk and assist, something like that. So don't mind him. But Carlo's the cheap guy.
Yeah, agreed. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.9 road total. That might come down a little bit during the day. At Montreal, the Canadiens have a 2.7. This is the first of many really, really good power play spots. The prices on Vegas are around where they were the other night. They went up a little bit. Like Eichel was 7,000, Stone was 5,000. Stevenson did come up. He's 4,900. So, I mean, the price on Vegas one is still reasonable, though. And since they've been put back together, they've seen a ton of ice time. They're fully correlated on the power play. They get a very good matchup with the Montreal Canadiens. I think both Vegas lines are in play. The second, Marcia So's on the top power play unit. Then you get Riley Smith and William Karlsson on the second power play unit. So I think the second line is fine as well. But for me, this is Vegas 1. On the Montreal side, I still kind of have interest in that top line. Don't know how much I'm going to be getting to tonight with this big slate, but what are you seeing here?
Yeah, it is a good PP spot for Vegas. I don't want to kind of minimize that because Montreal's penalty kill has struggled. But I'm glad you're okay. But Montreal, like a couple things. Montreal doesn't take a lot of penalties. I think they're like 21st or 22nd in time shorthanded per game. They're definitely not like way down with the St. Louis and especially Vegas. Vegas doesn't take many penalties at all either, but they don't take a lot. Vegas doesn't draw a ton of power plays either. They're also in the bottom 10 by power plays drawn. So it's like it is a good power play spot, but if they only get a couple chances, like you want more kicks at the can, I guess. So I think stacking the Vegas top line is perfectly fine. I wouldn't do it for the power play necessarily. I would do it for the 5-on-5 matchup. But the thing about that 5-on-5 matchup is that Kirby Dach had moved to the top line with in Montreal with Suzuki and Caulfield. And Dach has been, I talked about it on the last show. He's been pretty good for Montreal to start this season. He had injuries for a couple years, underperformance on a bad Chicago team. He looks like the guy he was in his rookie season where there will be shifts where he just dominates in the defensive zone. And it completely changes the complexion of that Montreal top line because they're as good as they were offensively. They struggled a lot defensively, and I think he kind of changes that a little bit. Now, they're still getting that Vegas top line with Stone, Stevenson, and Eichel, which has been absolute dynamite this year. 80 minutes together, 4.6 expected goals generated, over 5 actual goals per 60 minutes. Like, they've been really, really good. And as you said, they're getting more ice time. Eichel up near 1930 a night since Stone got moved to his line with over 4 shots per game. So I do like Vegas one here. I wonder if they come in highly owned. That's my only kind of concern here because they're not super expensive, right? I think they're under 18,000 over on DK. So you can fit them in with another pretty good line and still get good defensemen in. And it is Montreal. Like it is ostensibly a good matchup for them. So I just worry about an over leveraged line on the road, like almost regardless of matchup. You know what I mean? So I don't mind Vegas one. I kind of think I do like Montreal, like going back to Montreal one again here, especially where they're all perfectly correlated. I think Vegas 2 is kind of more interesting to me here. They've been playing 16, 17, 18 minutes, which isn't a lot, but you're also not paying a lot for them. Marchessault being the most expensive because he does get those top power play minutes, but it's a relatively cheap line. The Montreal second and third lines, once you get after the Kirby Doc line, like there just isn't much defensively. Gallagher and Dvorak, 3.9 expected goals against this year per 60 minutes, 4.0 actual goals. Whereas that Vegas second line has been really good offensively. So I think it's Vegas 2 that I kind of like the most in this game. But really, I think either of the top lines are in play. But if I, kind of gun to my head, I got to take one line from this game. I think it's going to be Vegas 2. I just think they get much better matchups in the game.
Yeah, and I do agree with you on Vegas one ownership concerns. They've been pretty high owned the past few slates. They've done well. They haven't broken anything open, but big total. Good power play spot. I think they do come in over owned, but we will find out when the ownership gets run. Moving to the blue line, if you are doing anything with the Vegas power play, Alex Pietrangelo is your guy. 6,700. It's an okay price. Alec Martinez has a block bonus every game this season, but he's up to 5,600. I still think he's probably fine for what he does. On the Montreal side, just, I don't know. Joel Mudson's back, but yay. But he's 3,700. I just not really looking for too much on the blue line in this game.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. It seems like all the prices are getting too expensive. Like Caden Gooley and Jordan Harris, both in the 4Ks over on DraftKings. I think that's too much. Like you said, Pietrangelo, Martinez, Theodore, all 5,600 and above on DraftKings. I think Theodore's fine on FanDuel, where his price is a little bit more reasonable at 5,700. And you can get Caden Gooley for under 4K on FanDuel. I think he'd be my punt from this game, but in general, just not a lot of defensemen I like.
Concur. Let's move on to the next one. We have the Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.9 total heading into Ottawa. The Sens have a 3.8. So at the start of the game yesterday, Thursday, the Sens were running Pinto in between Tkachuk and Batherson, and then Stützle in between DeBrincat and Giroux, but they kind of got off to a rough start, and you saw Stützle back with Tkachuk, but they weren't with Batherson. So it's going to be – we'll have to wait and see for some morning skate here. There could be some wonky lines. I would imagine you'll see Stützle with Tkachuk again. They've been there all season. I don't know why they decided to mix it up. I think, you might see Pinto in between DeBrincat and Giroux, but we'll have to wait and see with morning skate. Either way, again, I do like the Sens here. I do have to wait and see lines. I don't mind the Flyers top line here. They get a lot of ice time. They're fairly cheap. Konechny is 6,300, but he's been shooting a ton this season. Kevin Hayes, 5,500 is decent. You know what I mean? Like Farabee, his prices started to come up, but he's still reasonably priced at 4,600. He sees a ton of ice time. Not like the Sens are defensive juggernauts. Carter Hart's been still he's been crazy to start the season again. Eventually, maybe not. Maybe he plays great all season. I don't know. I like both sides of this game. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I just want to mention they did practice yesterday, and they did go to the lines that they finished with. So it was Kachuk, Stützle, and Giroux in practice yesterday. Obviously, with these new lines and with all the new players coming in the offseason, we don't have a sample to work with for how they played together. But I'll just reiterate what I mentioned on the last show. There's a guy, his name's Corey Snager. He hand tracks hundreds of NHL games every year. So far this season, he has Tim Stützle as one of the strongest scoring chance contributors in the league. Scoring chances for himself plus assists on teammate scoring chances. He just really helps generate a lot of offense when he's on the ice, at least so far this year. And yeah, it is a small sample, but I think we saw him kind of become that player in the second half of last season. And it's just a continuation of that development. So Stützle, Kachuk, and Giroux is probably the line that I would look to in this game. The problem is that they ran new power play units in practice yesterday, and they're going with two defensemen on the top unit, Chabot and Jake Sanderson, along with Batherson, and then the top line duo of Stützle and Kachuk. So you're not going to get perfect correlation no matter which Ottawa line you use if you're using an Ottawa line here in this game. So that kind of sucks, especially where the Flyers penalty kill isn't very good. But I wonder how good the Ottawa power play is going to be with Sanderson and Chabot both on the top unit. So I mean, I would probably go with Stützle, Kachuk, Giroux because I feel like they would get the most ice time in this game. And they're going up against a Philly top line that just has not been good. I assume they're going to get the Philly top line. Although Pinto's line did get some, quote unquote shutdown minutes against Vegas when they were put together at the end of last game. But Philly's top line has really struggled this year. 4.2 expected goals against, 4.1 actual goals against. They're playing a lot of heavy minutes. I don't know if they're, anybody on that line is like, here's 21 minutes. Go find a lot of success with it. So I don't know if it's necessarily a great spot for the Philly top line for how much they've struggled. They've really relied on shooting percentages so far this year. So not so high on the Flyers. I think Travis Konechny is fine as a one-off here in this game. He is shooting quite a bit on the power play. And Ottawa does take a lot of penalties. And Philly does draw a decent amount of power plays. Like Ottawa, 5th in time shorthanded so far this season. So I think there is some merit to using some of the Flyers power play guys. We'll get to the defenseman in a bit. Namely Travis Konechny. But I think if I'm going with the Flyers, it's just one-offing some guys, like a one-off Konechny, maybe even a one-off Scott Lawton if you need somebody relatively cheap. He's been playing a lot of minutes on that second line for the Flyers. But for me, it is about that Ottawa top line, Giroux, Stützle, Kachuk. It's just I imagine when we get our ownership run, they're going to be one of the more owned lines on this slate. That's just kind of my only concern.
Yeah, I wish we had ownership. I mean, it's very early in the morning, so we don't expect it, but it would be nice. It's just, we'll give you the best analysis we can without, assuming ownership. And, I think you're kind of right. Ottawa is going to get a lot of ownership in this game, so we'll have to wait and see. Moving to the blue line, with Sanderson on the top power play unit, he's 2,800. I think you can use him as a nice punt there. Tony DeAngelo on the flip side, 6,500. I think he's fine if you're playing the Flyers or as a one-off if you have that salary available. Other than that, like Chabot, I guess is fine as well at 6,100. Travis Sanheim, a mid-range punt for the Flyers is I'm also interested in.
Yeah, I think Jake Sanderson is obviously, with his new role, that's obviously the guy that we would look to for his price. Eric Brandstrom's been playing on the top pair. Now he looks like he's going to get meaningful power play minutes running the second unit. It's, it has the Brincat, it has Giroux. I imagine they're not going to see no ice time. So I think Brandstrom is fine, but I think it's probably Sanderson is the blue liner I like most. But Tony DeAngelo could get a lot of power play time in this game. Like I said, Ottawa does take a lot of penalties. So I think DeAngelo is definitely in play on both sides where he's not super expensive. He's not in that, that absurd Rasmus Dahl and Brandon Montour range just yet.
Yep. As we mentioned at the top, we are sponsored by BetMGM, and do we have an offer for you? This is easily the best offer I have read on the show. You get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $1,000 risk-free bet when you sign up. Make a deposit and make your first paid wager at BetMGM. Do you want to know how to do it? Glad you asked, because I'm going to tell you. So just quickly, we had the hardwood promo, which was 10 days of Stokastic Plus Platinum for $10. With this, you get 2 free months of Stokastic Platinum, basically for a $10 risk-free bet. So you create a free Stokastic membership using the link below. It's the top link in the description. Or if you have one already, you just log in using your logins on Stokastic.com. Then you click the big old BetMGM button that appears. You can't miss it. It says BetMGM, and it's huge. After registering and logging in, then complete the necessary steps with BetMGM. You got to create a BetMGM account. That's important. It can't be for existing BetMGM users. So there's 45 of you in here. I know there's at least 2 of you who do not have a BetMGM account yet. You're holding out for this offer. This one's for you. You create your sportsbook account. You deposit at least $10. Now you can deposit whatever you want, really. You get up to $1,000 risk-free bet. So if you bet $1,000 on something, you get, $1,000 risk-free bet if it loses. But you could do as low as $10. You make your first paid bet, and then after your bet settles, you qualify for the Stokastic subscription. So for as low as $10, you get 2 free months of Stokastic Platinum, which is an insane deal. So yeah, after you complete all those steps, the bet processes, you get 2 free months. So this is easily the best deal. If I didn't have a BetMGM account, I already signed up my wife. So I might sign up Avery. No, just kidding. He's 8. You have to be at least 18. So find someone in your family to do that. So it's great. It's easily one of the best promos we've ran. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Buffalo Sabres with a 2.6 total heading into Tampa. The Lightning have a 4.1 total. I feel like that total is a little high, but anything over 3.5 here is fine. Buffalo's back-to-back on the road, so maybe that's why as well. Craig Anderson started last night, so it's probably going to be Eric Comrie. For the Sabres, this is a pretty good spot for Tampa. I don't know. Not a big fan of their price here. Sergachev, yeah, he's still, his price got a huge bump with Hedman still out. Maybe Hedman might be back tonight. I haven't seen news there.
Yeah, he skated in practice yesterday, so
yeah, so there's a good chance he'll be back. He's 6,900, but you got some pretty heavy prices here. Rasmus Dahlin 8K, Stamkos 7,800, Kucherov 7,700. Braden Point up above 6K. So if you want to do a power play stack, it's going to get very, very pricey. I think, what you can do is maybe just full stack the Tampa top line here or the second line. Back to back on the road worries me a lot for the Sabres here. They just, didn't look great last night. I can't imagine they're going to look great tonight. So what are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I think this is one of the power play spots that you mentioned earlier that is really important. These 2 teams are both in the top 5 for power play opportunities per game. They don't necessarily take a ton of penalties. Tampa Bay right around league average at 3.6 times shorthanded per game. Buffalo a little bit lower, but these are 2 pretty skilled teams that do draw a lot of penalties. And with Nick Paul injured, Tampa looks like they may go 11 forwards, 7 defensemen here tonight, which makes sense for a couple reasons. I mean, obviously they can for cap reasons, but also kind of helps them ease Victor Hedman in a little bit rather than having to play him 25 minutes, 26 minutes in his first game back. But what that does to the forwards is it just really messes with all the forward lines, right? I think they had Vlad Nemesnikov in Nick Paul's spot on the second line with Stamkos in practice, but like he's not going to stay there all game. Like there are going to be times when Ross Colton jumps up or Corey Perry jumps up or Stamkos, goes down to play with the third line or something like that. I think you're just going to see, the Tampa top forwards, Stamkos, Point, and Kucherov have been playing a ton of minutes so far this season. And I think you're going to see that again here tonight, especially and in a spot where they could end up with a decent amount of power plays. I do like the Tampa top line in this game here tonight. And the reason for that is they typically send out the Stamkos line against opposing top line. So that means Stamkos up against Tage Thompson and those guys here tonight. But Buffalo kind of split up their lines last night, and they put Casey Middlestat and Victor Olofsson together with Rasmus Asplund. Not very good in their time together, underwater by expected goal share. Only 2 expected goals generated per 60 minutes. Like, it's not a very good line. And I think Tampa's top line could really roll over them here tonight. And, with 11 forwards, they were playing 21 minutes a game as it was already. Stamkos shooting a ton so far this season. I think there's a lot of merit to a Tampa power play stack. Point, Kucherov. If you want Stamkos, if you want to throw Hedman in there, I think Hedman's fine, especially where his price isn't really that excessive. On DK, he's in the low 6s, which is, perfectly fine. More expensive on FanDuel, so a little bit more of a decision. But, I think Hedman, adding him to a power play stack, as long as he plays, I think is perfectly fine. But it is a power play stack I like in this game for the Tampa side. On the Buffalo side, they moved Alex Tuch back to the top line last night. Whether that's what they go with, we'll find out at warmups, I guess. I would have interest in the Buffalo top line. If Tuch stays there, I had less interest with them. When Kyle Okposo was there, they just seemed to generate a lot of offense with Tuch on the top line. But Tuch's still really expensive on DraftKings, $7,000, man. So, where that line's going to cost you $20K, like $20K back-to-back on the road, even if Tampa's not as good defensively as they have been, I think this is a pass for me from the Sabres side, unless I was playing like 150 lineups or something. It's just Tampa power play stack for me.
Yeah. I'm going single lineup tonight, which I normally do, but I am out on the Sabres. There's no point for me stacking back-to-back on the road on a 10-gamer. But if you are doing 150 and Tuch is on that top line, I think you can have a little bit in your portfolio. Moving to the blue lines, Rasmus Dahlin, 8K. It's actually justifiable considering his peripherals and his start to the season. I just don't think I'm going to get there tonight. Hedman, 6,900 for Tampa power play is a good price. If he's out, Sergachev, 6,400 would take his role. Other than that, I'm not really looking for defensemen in this game.
Yeah, especially if Tampa goes 7D, you might see a lot of down ice time. So, outside of Hedman in power play stacks, I don't think so. Owen Power played 24 minutes last night. He's had an inconsistent role, but at least where he's sub $3,000 on DK, like if he can play that again, I think Power on DK is fine if you need a cheapish defenseman, but that's about it for me.
Yep, agreed. So let's move on to the next one. We have the Seattle Kraken with a 2.8 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 3.8 total. I think that total hinges on if Jake Gensel plays. He is questionable with an illness. We'll have to see what that does to the lines here. Again, we'll kind of sound like a broken record. Seattle has been fairly good defensively. They have not been good goaltending, although Party Marty Jones did get a shutout, so I am required to do a show in a sombrero at some point this season, which I will do. So I do like Pittsburgh here. Goaltending in Seattle is always the concern, but and Jake Gensel is a big question mark here, so it's kind of hard to give analysis whether he's in or out. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, obviously Gensel, a lot would hinge on him playing. We've said it often in the show so far this year, and it's because Gensel's missed a handful of games. The top line's just not near as good offensively without him. You see their goal score drop like 20% or something like that. Like, that's pretty significant when you're looking at such a large sample, because him and Crosby have played so much together over the last 3 or 4 years. It is a concern. Going into Pittsburgh hasn't necessarily been using Crosby exclusively in a shutdown role as they have in years gone by. He does see some of that second line for Seattle, the Bjorkstrand-Burakovsky line. He should see a fair bit of them here tonight. And, we talk about that Bjorkstrand-Burakovsky line. It seems like every show the Kraken are on. Eventually, they're going to score. They got to. Eventually, they got to score. But they generate a lot of offense, but they also give up a fair bit at the other side, 3.0 expected goals against per 60 minutes. So I think this isn't a bad matchup for that top line. You can use Crosby and Rust as like a little two-man and get some power play exposure. Not like it's a great power play spot for Pittsburgh, because the Seattle penalty kill actually isn't that bad. But Pittsburgh is drawing a lot of power plays so far this year. Gensel's helps on the power play, but he's not a necessity. Rickard Rakell has actually been fine on the power play, generating a lot of shots so far for them. So I don't mind a two-man of Crosby and Rust in this game. I would play the full line if Gensel was there. If it is Dan Heinen, I don't think you necessarily have to play them. But I think they play a high-paced matchup against that Seattle second line here in this game. So I don't mind the Pittsburgh top line. Less enthused about the Pittsburgh second line. They have been good in their numbers together, 3.2 expected goals generated per 60 minutes. But they get a much tougher matchup, believe it or not, against Matty Beniers. It's because of his wingers, Jordan Eberle and Jaden Schwartz, playing pretty well so far this year. Schwartz is a very good two-way winger. I think one of the more underrated guys, and it's because he's just hurt too much, but he's healthy right now. He's playing real well. I think it's a decent matchup for that Beniers, Eberle, and Schwartz line. And what's more is that they're all skating on the same power play unit together. So you get perfect correlation for them. And Seattle is drawing a fair amount of power plays. They're at least, a little bit above league average. So don't mind that Beniers line here tonight. If you need like a super cheap, I think it'll be a contrarian line on the road here. But it's the Pittsburgh top line that's really drawing my interest, Crosby and Rust especially, and then we'll see if Gensel's in a little bit later today.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to – at least it's a 7 p.m. Eastern start, so we'll know before the game. I think, if Gensel's in and they don't announce it until warmups, you can get that top line, that combo at least, at fairly low ownership. Like Gensel will come in fairly low owned compared to Crosby and Rust. So be aware, be in our Discord, do that. Moving to the blue lines, Chris Letang, 5,800. He's sometimes good, sometimes shit. Like, you just don't know with Letang.
Perfect time to use that.
Yeah. Got to get a little crazy Saturday morning to get us through. Letang, 50, he's fine. I just, I wouldn't want off him. Like, I would just include him in your Pittsburgh stacks if you want to. I don't know. He's kind of enigma to start the season. Other than that, like Vince Dunn, it's 3,900 is fine. Marcus Patterson's a little bit too expensive. Like, that's about it from this game. Maybe Alexiak, just like contractual obligation to mention him.
Yeah, I guess Carson Soucy, if you need a full punt on DraftKings, is playable. This isn't a game where I'm really excited about defensemen, though. Like, Chris Letang's shot rate has just absolutely cratered, which is why I agree he's not I don't think he's a good one-off tonight. Like, I don't see him putting up, 1 assist, but 7 shots, 4 blocks or something like that. Like, he's going to need to get on the score sheet officially. So I think Letang in some Pittsburgh stacks, but that's really it from this.
Yeah. So let's move on to another carnival, we'll call it. The Arizona Coyotes with a 2.5 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 4.2 total. I'll be interested to see that total fluctuate through the day. Like, Ovechkin is very cheap, 7,600. I would imagine he gets heavy ownership today. This is one of those very, very good power play spots. I just like Oshie's out. Like, Carlson's out. Like, I don't love this power play for the Capitals. That being said, the guys that are replacing these guys are cheap. Like Gustafsson is 2,700 on the top power play. He's going to get some ownership here. Like, Kuznetsov's only 4K. Like, to a full power play stack, the Capitals tonight, they're very cheap. I have a feeling they're going to get heavy ownership. What are you doing with the Capitals tonight?
Yeah, I'm not super in on Arizona. Like, I'm just gonna skip over them. Like the Maselli line, I think Maselli, Krause, and Bukestad. Like, if you want to grab one of those guys because they were playing a lot last game, maybe they had 18, 19 minutes in this game. I think it's fine, but there's nobody generating anything on this team. Like, Christian Fischer leads them in shot rate. Like, there's just nobody doing anything on that team. So on a 10-game slate, yeah, I'm just passing on Arizona. At least they're forwards. The Washington side, a little bit interesting. Ovechkin and Shiri back together with Kuznetsov. Ovechkin and Shiri actually pretty good together on the season. 3.5 expected goals generated in 75 minutes together. That's not bad. Obviously, they shouldn't have much trouble generating against Arizona here tonight. Another thing is, like, as you mentioned with the power play spot, Arizona 3.9 time shorthanded per game. You know, if they give up 4 power plays to Washington, could be a problem. But you mentioned the injuries, and we'll see. Maybe John Carlson can return, but I doubt it. He got transferred to the IR. But I was looking at Washington's power play numbers without Carlson and without Backstrom over the last few years, and they're pretty bad. Like, I'm talking about 5.5 goals generated per 60 minutes, 5.5, and 5.5 expected goals generated. Like, that's, you know, when Washington was in its heyday, like, they would have double those numbers. So like, there's just going to be a ton of ownership on them. And I think you're fine to one off Ovechkin, but if I were to do anything, it would probably be like some sort of, you know, a power play stack, I guess, even though the power play hasn't been good. I just think they get a lot of opportunities against Arizona here tonight. But I just have this sinking feeling this is one of those games where, you know, Vejmelka saves 37 of 39 or something like that, and Washington just really disappoints us. I think they're a fade for me in single entry. Obviously, when you play a ton of lineups, things are different. But the Washington, it'd be the Washington top line or Washington power play that I have interest in. I wouldn't be going much deeper than that.
Yeah, this is one of those games where, like you said, like Vejmelka will save 38 of 40, and then Ovechkin will hit the empty net for a hat trick. You know what I mean? Just like absolutely just nuke you. But I agree. Like, single entry, I fade the Caps religiously. Church of Josh. The Church of Josh is fading the Capitals tonight. I'll tell you that now. Like, they will not be in my lineups tonight. But even if you are single entry, I think you can play, you know, one off Ovechkin. The more lineups you get, the more you can get into the Caps. Like, I'm never enthusiastic about playing this unit without, like, Oshie, without Backstrom. Like, Backstrom is the straw that stirs the drink on the power play. So until he comes back, like, I have trouble getting interest in the Capitals here. So moving to the blue lines here, you know, Ghost at 7K, like, get out of here. Get out of here. It's probably just going to be, you know, Gustafsson if he is running the top power play unit. I guess if you need shot blocks like Josh Brown, like Nick Jensen plays big old minutes, but he's 4K now.
Yeah, he is starting to get pretty expensive. I think Martin Fairbury, Stoneman price, as long as he's playing, I guess we'll see. I think he's perfectly fine. Gustafsson, obviously, for that additional power play exposure, but I do think the Washington defensemen are starting to get a little bit expensive. So nothing that's a must play for me.
Gain access to all of our betting experts in our premium Discord by clicking the link in the description below. Use that link to get your first week of access for free. Then it's just $9.95 afterwards. Why don't you parlay that BetMGM Stokastic Platinum with this? And what do you get? You get access to all of our betting experts. The first week is 100% free. You get more picks, more access to the people you see on the shows. And, you know, you get a nice pink name on Discord, which is always nice. You get a great community. You get a lot, like, all these guys are, you know, dropping in live bets and, you know, pregame bets. Like, it's just a whole bunch of stuff going on there. You know, first week is free. Get in the Discord, check it out. We got 4 games left, a little over 10 minutes to get through it. So, like Russell Wilson, we ride on. New Jersey with a 3.0 total heading into Calgary. The Flames, or the Flams as we call them now, have a 3.7 total. Flames really demolished their lines. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go back to the original lines they had at the beginning of the season. Like, the Muppet just kind of, galaxy brains himself for a little bit, and then it goes back to status quo. We'll have to wait and see. On the Devils side, like, it's going to be the Jack Hughes line. I just, Lindy Ruff, not the best coach for DFS. Hughes' minutes have been very wonky, been up and down, but that line has been ridiculous. We have to wait and see on the Flames lines, but I think there is interest on the Flames depending on the lines. What are you seeing?
I think it depends on the New Jersey lines as well, because towards the end of their last game, they moved Jesper Bratt to the I call it the second line. The second line with Nico Hischier for their last 4 or 5 shifts. And generally speaking, when I want to use the New Jersey Devils, I want to use the line that Jesper Bratt's on. Like, he's easily their best winger. He generates a ton of offense no matter where he is. But not only that, is that he makes lines better defensively, especially the Jack Hughes line. If you look at their numbers over the last couple of years, like Hughes' defensive numbers across the board, whether expected goals, shots against, actual goals, whatever, they go up considerably when he's not with Jesper Bratt, and it's just they don't have the depth on the wing right now to kind of replace Bratt's impact on that line. So, got to see what they do at morning skate. But assuming that they leave Hischier and Bratt together, I do have a little bit of interest in Lindholm and Toffoli, which kind of feels tough to say. But they haven't been that bad together this year. 2.6 expected goals for per 60 minutes, a little bit above league average. They're controlling the play, like expected goal share above water. It's just, poor shooting percentages. Like, I think Tyler Toffoli's under 5% shooting so far this year. He's a guy that can go in prolonged stretches, but they play the power play together. They could get a good matchup with Hughes if Hughes isn't with Bratt. So I'm gonna wait and see what lineups look like at morning skate. But assuming Bratt is with Hischier, I would have a little bit of interest in Lindholm and Toffoli. On the New Jersey side, this should be a tough matchup. But Calgary might skate Huberdeau with Nazem Kadri, and pretty small sample start this year, but really not great defensively to start this season. So if Hischier is with Bratt, I do have a little bit of interest in that line, especially where Calgary has a good penalty kill, but they're taking the second most penalties in the league so far this season, second most time shorthanded. So if Bratt is with Hischier, I do have some interest in them as a really low-owned two-man here tonight going into Calgary. Really great offensive numbers together over the years. Could be a tough matchup, but could get a lot of power play opportunities, could get a decent 5-on-5 matchup. So I might be in on Hischier and Bratt tonight. We'll see at morning skate.
Yeah, I'm always interested in the line Bratt's on. His micro stats are ridiculous. Moving to the blue line, Dougie Hamilton, 6,800. I guess is fine. Rasmus Anderson, 5,500 seems expensive for what he does. I think I'm going to be more apt to play like Ryan Graves, Damon Severson, Noah Hannafin.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait to see if Chris Tanev is back in the lineup tonight. If he's not back, Mackenzie Weegar saw his numbers or his ice time go up quite a bit. I think he was almost 22 minutes last game. He had been 18, 19 a lot before that. Don't mind Weegar. Assuming Stone is still out. Don't mind Ryan Graves again on the other side. Scored last game. We've been on him for a few games now. Good peripherals, good ice time. Ryan Graves, a decent cheap guy.
Let's move on to the last 3 games, and oh boy, are they power play soup de jours, whatever you want to call it. Nashville Predators with a 3.2 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.4. We just saw the Canucks go absolutely ham on the Ducks. Kuzmenko, I think, scored a natty hat. Pettersson had 5 points. Horvat had a points bonus. JT Miller got in on the Nashville's penalty kill, not great here. I think you can power play stack the Canucks. Now, I will say from a 5-on-5 standpoint, it's going to be that Pettersson line for me. They just create so much more than that top line with JT Miller and Horvat. But if you want to power play stack, that's fine. What are you seeing?
Yeah, just want to briefly mention Niels Hoglander jumped to the top line in practice yesterday with Horvat and Miller for Vancouver. I think he could be a good addition, but one problem here is JT Miller really not shooting much this year, not at 5-on-5 anyway. And that they'll be going up against the Nashville top line. Nashville top line's been starting to play better, at least offensively. So Vancouver top line could have a little trouble generating at 5-on-5. But I think it's power play stacking is the way to go on the Vancouver side. You know, we saw it, like you said, we saw it last game. Like all their top guys all got in heavily because the power play did so well. Now you don't expect them to score 8 goals every game. But Nashville, they do take their fair share of penalties. They're above the league average. Penalty kill is not very good. It's UC Saros that's saving them with like a 915 penalty kill save percentage or something. He's just been crazy this year. Vancouver power play has started to look a lot better. They're using Kuzmenko kind of in like a Chris Kreider role, like, playing around the crease, deflecting pucks, looking for backdoor tap-ins. Now that they're getting acclimated with that new guy on the power play, they've started to really bring it around. So I do like a Vancouver power play stack here. Starting to get a little bit expensive, but at the least, Kuzmenko's still not. So I think they're perfectly acceptable here tonight. Nashville, on the Nashville side, probably just go to the Granlund line, but I kind of want to wait to see who's starting for Vancouver here tonight. Like it's supposed to be Thatcher Demko, but like Spencer Martin, he's been playing better this year. Vancouver can't keep giving away games. I don't wonder if Spencer Martin starts here tonight. So might be off of Nashville here, especially where Vancouver just doesn't take a lot of penalties, or one of the lowest time shorthanded on the season. So I think this is about a Vancouver power play stack for me.
Yeah, I don't mind one-offing Forsberg or one-offing Duchesne, something like that, or pairing him with Yossi. But yeah, this is Vancouver game for me. And just a quick note on Vancouver, like last year, they were one of the most power play reliant teams in the NHL. Like it was just ridiculous. And it's kind of the same thing. That Pettersson line has been creating at 5-on-5 though, which is nice to see. I would also assume that the Canucks see some heavy ownership tonight. Especially with the game that they had last time. This is a good power play matchup. Just check out for ownership. Moving to the blue line, Roman Josi, 8,300. If you have the salary for him, you can use him. Wouldn't go out of my way to play him. Quinn Hughes, if you're doing anything with the power play. Other than that, oh, no, wait. I will say Ethan Bear almost had a combo meal the other game. He saw almost 20 minutes. He's min price.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Bear and McDonough for cheaper guys on DK, but that's it for me.
Yep. So let's move on to another carnival on the power play here. We got the Florida Panthers with a 3.6 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings also have a 3.6. Panthers solved the San Jose penalty kill for that was the first power play goal the Sharks have given up this season. If the Panthers are going to start regressing, positive regression with their shooting percentage, love Florida Panthers power play here tonight. What are you seeing?
Yeah, Gabe Vilardi being moved to that Kings top line has really made that top line pretty good. Like Vilardi's flat out been one of the best players in the NHL to start the season. 4.3 expected goals generated with him on the ice. They're all on the top power play together. They've been generating about 9 expected goals per 60 minutes since Vilardi jumped to the top power play. Florida does take a fair share of penalties. They're above league average. The Kings are drawing the 3rd most power play opportunities per game, but Florida's also drawing the 2nd most power play opportunities per game on the season, while the Kings are giving up the 4th most time shorthanded. Like, we should see a lot of special teams in this game. So where the Kings' top 2 lines are both fully correlated on the power play, do get reasonable ice time. I honestly don't mind just going right to the Kings top line here. They get matched up against the Florida second line a lot. Florida's second line, not really that great defensively this year. I'd say about league average at best. So that Kings top line, reasonably priced, great power play matchup for them. Getting a good 5-on-5 matchup. I do like that Kings top line in this game. On the other side, it would probably be the Florida top line that I would go back to. They've been really good together this year. But they're going to get that Kings second line. And the one thing about that Kings second line is since the first few games of the season, they've been really, really good defensively. They're starting to look more like the line they were last year. So I think this is a spot where unless there's crazy low ownership on Florida, which I don't think there will be, I think this is about the Kings top line.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think the Kings top line gets overlooked a little bit on this slate. So if they get some good ownership, I'm interested in. Well, moving to the blue line pricing in this game is just bonkers. Montour 7,200, Forsling 6K. I guess if you're power play stacking, you can use Montour. It just feels weird clicking in a $7,200 Montour. Drew Doughty 5,100 I think is fine. Even Goodass is 4,800. So for me in this game, it's Doughty or Dursey, I think.
Yeah, I mean Montour's playing 27 minutes plus every single night. And the power play's been better with him. So honestly, at least on FanDuel, I think Montour's fine at 6,300. I think Sean Dursey is the guy again on both sites that I like. So I think I'd go back to Dursey.
Yep. Last game, Anaheim Ducks with a 3.1 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 3.6. I'll be quick. I like one-offs from the Ducks, like a Zegras or a two-man with Terry. On the Sharks side, I guarantee you the Sharks are going to be chalky tonight. Erik Karlsson has been ridiculous. Timo Meier has been ridiculous. They're going to have heavy ownership. Do you still want to play him?
Yeah, it's Terry and Ryan Strome that I actually have interest in from this game. Can't believe I'm saying Ryan Strome, but San Jose top line has Kevin Labanc there. They have not been good defensively whenever he's been on that line going back a couple seasons, and that line just hasn't been great defensively this year anyway. So it's Strome and Troy Terry that I kind of like as a two-man. Again, one-offing Troy Terry I think is just fine here, but assuming there's just a ton of ownership on San Jose, I'm not staying up till 3:00 in the morning just to get short. So Ryan Strome and Troy Terry is what I like, especially with the way Terry's generating offense. He's just, he creates a lot when he's on the ice. So I'll take what I think is the best offensive player in this game.
Yep. And Erik Karlsson's been ridiculous to start the season. He is shooting 27% though. Coming up right after us is the NBA strategy show with Emac and Adam. Real quick, let's get your goalie picks and some hat trick picks.
My hat trick pick, going back to that Kings game, I'm going with Adrian Kempe on the top line for the Kings. In net, don't mind Jake Allen if you want somebody cheap. Cam Talbot if you want somebody cheap over on FanDuel. Otherwise, UC Saros and Linus Ullmark, I think, are the goalies I'm looking to.
Yep. Nothing to add from the goalies there. And my hat trick pick is going to be, I don't know, Jesper Bratt.
All right, there we go. I like Jesper Bratt, Adrian Kempe. Let's do it tonight.
So for producer Sim Cliffy, I'm your host, Josh Harris. We'll be back Tuesday for multiple shows because there is no NBA. We'll have a strategy show and a live before lock. So look out for that. We'll see you then. We'll see you in the Discord. BetMGM. We love you. See you later.
Good luck tonight.